Hi, welcome to MediatorPodcast.com, a podcast and video series about mediation, negotiation, and collaboration. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I provide valuation and divorce mediation services in St. Louis, Missouri. During this episode, we will discuss the divorce mediation process and the Better Apart method with Gabrielle Hartley. She is a leading divorce attorney, online mediator, and author of Better Apart. She's also a vice chair in the American Bar Association's dispute resolution section. And when she wrote Better Apart, Gwyneth Paltrow actually endorsed her book. What is co-mediation then?
I love co-mediation. It is so much fun. I love the real collaborative process too, which is team-based. Although co-mediation, at least where I live, is much more popular. Many more people do it, and in New York as well. So co-mediation, just as you just said, it would involve a mediator, maybe two mediators, depending on the size of the net worth and how much you need to process what makes sense for both of you. And then you can have a financial expert, you can have a mental health expert, you can have a valuation expert, you can have a child therapist expert, you can have a divorce coach, you could have, two child advocates, one who's a specialist in, ADHD or something that your kid has, and someone else who just does parenting plans. I mean, I would say most teams that I have worked on have probably 4 people, not more than that. But depending on the complexity of the case, things can be complicated when there's a lot of money, when there are children with special needs, right? Or where there are adults with special needs.
Yeah. And
special needs don't necessarily mean in a wheelchair, like complicated people who still want to do things nicely. There's lots. If you're thinking like, oh, that sounds like me, or that's my husband or my wife, like it's a lot of people. So, the problem, and one of the reasons that I'm very committed to doing a lot of talking, not just to professionals, but to people, is that I think that the shame and stigma of divorce persists, and it's time to wrap it up. Laura Wasser calls it the evolution of dissolution. I call it the positive divorce movement. I mean, the fact is that when you consider that 50% of all marriages do still end in divorce, that means all of those people's kids are going to feel like crappy about themselves if you don't feel good about yourself and your choice. And even if it weren't your choice, how can you shift your narrative so that you believe that, in fact, it was your choice, even if you weren't the active decision maker, and that it was a good choice? You wouldn't put up with something anymore. That's your choice. Right?
Well, and I think that the choice is the key, and that we're all grown adults and we can change our mind, and that's okay. There's so much, well, this is the bad way or this is the good way. And I was like, can't it just be the way? Can't it just be my way, of how I feel like I'm going to live my life and things like that? But I think another piece of that is trying to understand how mediation fits in here. So somebody says, you know what, and maybe they're listening, or maybe they've been reading about, I'm going to get divorced, but they haven't said anything to their spouse. What do you say to somebody who comes to you and says, I like this process. I think this would be healthy for us. We got some issues, but I think we could work through them, but I don't think I can convince my husband or wife to do this. Like what? Because I think that's where it comes sometimes. Is like you got one person that wants to do it, the other person's like, I don't know.
You need a 2-party buy-in. So you might have to spend $10,000 or $30,000 first when the other person gets sick of it. The other person, a lot of cases come to me after something's been filed, after there's been some big upheaval, after the judge orders them out of mediation. And that's because one of the people just did not believe in mediation, did not want to go to mediation. It could be either person. Again, that's a whole other show we could do, like, what the different profiles of people who wind up in mediation and how they get there. But basically, just because you may have been served with papers, it doesn't mean that it's a fait accompli, that you're going all the way to trial. Most cases resolve long before trial. A mediator can be used at any point along the litigation. You don't need your lawyer's assent to go to a mediation, although you should certainly talk to them about it. Mm-hmm. But remember, you have to be mindful of your own interests. So that's another reason that I wrote Better Apart. And I need to mention Elena Brower is my yoga expert in the book. While I practice yoga, I'm not a yogi or yogini. Yeah. So, I just think it's really important that you remember that this is your life. It's not your lawyer's life. It's not your best friend's life. It's not your mother's life or your sister's life. You have to make smart choices for you, and only you know what those are. So if you find yourself dragged into court, it's okay, and if you find that you have to stay in court the whole way, that's okay too. And I talk about that in the book too. I mean, this book was very well thought through and written over a period of years, carefully addressing a lot of issues that are going to be relevant for most people who, I think all people who are getting divorced, have been divorced. Even I've gotten notes from people who are 30 years, 40 years post-divorce saying, oh my gosh, I wish I had read this. I could have lived my whole life differently. That's like a little, that's a very big compliment, but it's sad also.